Somewhere inside your body, flowing quietly through thousands of miles of blood vessels, is a mystery older than cities, older than farming, and perhaps older than some of the stories humans first told around ancient fires. Every second, your blood moves through you without asking for attention. It carries oxygen. It carries nutrients. It helps keep you alive. Most of the time, we rarely think about it. And yet, hidden within that blood is a strange detail that has puzzled scientists, doctors, and historians for generations. Some people have type of blood. Some have type B, some have type O, and some have type AB. At first glance, this may not seem very mysterious. After all, people are different in many ways. We have different eye colors, different heights, different voices, and different fingerprints. But blood types are different, because blood types are not simply random labels. They are ancient, very ancient. So ancient, in fact, that the story of blood types may begin long before the first kingdoms appeared beside rivers, long before pyramids rose from desert sands, long before writing was invented. To understand why humans have different blood types, we must travel backward through time. Not hundreds of years, not thousands, but tens of thousands of years, perhaps even further. Tonight, we will follow that journey slowly. We will move through forgotten landscapes, ancient migrations, invisible battles against disease, and surprising clues hidden inside the human body. And as we move deeper into the story, a quiet question will remain with us. Why did these blood types survive? If one blood type is enough to carry oxygen and keep a person alive, why do multiple blood types exist at all? What ancient purpose did they serve? And why are they still with us today? The answer, as we will discover, is far stranger than it first appears. Let us begin in a world that no longer exists. Imagine a vast landscape during the Ice Age. The air is colder. Great glaciers cover enormous parts of the northern world. Small groups of humans move carefully across grasslands and forests. They do not know they are making history. They are simply trying to survive. Every day brings challenges: finding food, avoiding predators, protecting children, enduring harsh weather. Life is uncertain, and yet hidden inside these ancient people is a biological inheritance that will travel across thousands of generations, something that will quietly pass from parent to child, something invisible, their blood type. Of course, these people have no idea such a thing exists. No one will discover blood types for many thousands of years, but the differences are already there. As families grow and populations spread into new lands, these blood types spread with them. Across mountains, across deserts, across forests, across continents, generation after generation. The mystery begins with a simple observation. If blood is so important, why isn't everyone's blood exactly the same? Nature often removes things that are unnecessary. If a feature provides no advantage, it tends to disappear over long periods of time. Yet blood types remained. Not only remained, they became widespread. This suggests something important. The differences must have mattered. Perhaps not every day. Perhaps not in obvious ways, but enough to survive countless generations. For a very long time, nobody knew blood types existed. Even doctors did not know. For most of human history, blood was mysterious. Ancient civilizations saw blood as a symbol of life itself. When someone lost too much blood, life faded away. When blood flowed strongly, a person seemed healthy. Many cultures believed blood contained spiritual power. Others believed it carried personality or strength. But nobody understood what blood actually was. The scientific story begins much later. By the 19th century, doctors had become interested in blood transfusions. The idea seemed simple. If a person loses blood, perhaps blood from another person can help save them. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it failed, and sometimes it failed in terrifying ways. Patients who should have recovered suddenly became sick. Some died unexpectedly. Doctors could not understand why. The blood looked the same. It appeared red. It flowed the same way. So why were the results so different? For years, nobody had an answer. Then, in the early 20th century, a scientist named Carl Landsteiner began studying the problem. His discovery would transform medicine forever. Landsteiner found that human blood was not identical. Different people carried different markers on the surface of their red blood cells. These markers caused reactions when incompatible blood mixed together. Suddenly, the mystery became clear. Blood was not one universal substance. There were different types. This discovery eventually led to the identification of the major blood groups we know today: Type A, Type B, Type AB, and Type O. What seemed like a simple medical breakthrough soon opened an entirely new mystery. Where did these blood types come from? Why did they exist? And perhaps most importantly, why had evolution kept all of them alive? At first, scientists assumed blood types might not matter very much. Perhaps they were simply harmless variations. But as research continued, surprising patterns began to appear. Certain diseases seemed to affect some blood types differently. Some populations had very high percentages of one blood type. Other populations showed completely different patterns. It was almost as if blood types were carrying memories from the distant past. Not memories in the way humans remember events, but biological memories, clues left behind by ancient struggles. Imagine a battlefield that disappeared thousands of years ago. The soldiers are gone. The weapons are gone. The cities are gone, but traces remain hidden beneath the ground. Blood types may be something like that. Evidence of ancient battles we can no longer see. Battles not between armies, but between humans and disease. To understand this possibility, we need to look closely at what blood types actually are. On the surface of your red blood cells are tiny molecules. These molecules act almost like identification tags. Your immune system recognizes them. Different blood types carry different versions of these tags. Type A carries one kind. Type B carries another. Type AB carries both. Type O carries neither. The differences seem small, almost insignificant, yet tiny differences can have enormous consequences in biology. A single change can affect how viruses attach to cells. A single change can influence how bacteria interact with the body. A single change can alter the outcome of disease. And suddenly, blood types begin to look less like random labels and more like evolutionary tools. Imagine ancient humans facing wave after wave of infection. There are no hospitals, no antibiotics, no vaccines. Every epidemic becomes a test of survival. In such a world, even a small biological advantage can matter. A tiny increase in survival can influence future generations. Those who survive have children. Those children inherit the traits that helped their parents survive. Over thousands of years, these patterns accumulate, slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. And this raises another fascinating possibility. Perhaps blood types survived because different blood types offered protection against different threats. Not perfect protection, just enough. Enough to matter. enough to be passed forward through time. As time passes slowly, another question emerges. If blood types are ancient adaptations, how old are they really? The answer surprises many scientists. Some blood type variations appear to be older than our own species. In fact, versions of these blood group systems exist in other primates. That means parts of this story may reach back millions of years, before modern humans, before the first Homo sapiens, before the world we usually think of as human history. The roots of blood types may extend deep into evolutionary time, like branches connected to an enormous biological tree, and somewhere within those ancient roots lies the beginning of the mystery. A mystery that becomes even stranger when we discover that some blood types appear to help against certain diseases while creating disadvantages in others. Why would evolution preserve such a complicated balance? What invisible forces shape these patterns? And what can they reveal about the long journey of our species? To answer those questions, we must move deeper into the story. We must leave the modern world behind and follow humanity into ancient landscapes where survival depended on forces most people never even knew existed. As we move deeper into this mystery, let us imagine something that is normally impossible to see. Imagine the world not through the eyes of humans, but through the eyes of disease. Not one disease, not one virus, but countless invisible organisms moving across the ancient world. For most of human history, these tiny creatures have shaped human destiny as much as kings, armies, and empires. They have traveled silently through villages. They have crossed rivers. They have followed trade routes. They have entered homes unnoticed. And long before humans understood what germs were, these invisible forces were already influencing evolution. Every living thing on Earth exists within a constant struggle. Not necessarily a violent struggle, more like an endless conversation between life forms. Plants adapt to weather, animals adapt to predators, and humans adapt to disease. Over thousands of generations, this process leaves marks upon the body. Some marks are easy to see, others remain hidden. Blood types belong to the hidden category. At first, it may seem strange that diseases could influence something as specific as blood type, but nature often works through details. The smallest differences can sometimes create the biggest effects. Imagine two houses standing side by side. Both look almost identical, but one has a lock that a certain thief cannot open. The difference appears tiny, yet for the people living inside, it may mean everything. Blood types can work in similar ways. Tiny molecular differences can affect how certain diseases interact with the body. Scientists have spent decades studying these relationships. The results are often surprising. Again and again, researchers discovered patterns suggesting that blood types are connected to ancient survival challenges. One famous example involves a disease that has haunted humanity for thousands of years: malaria. Today, many people associate malaria with tropical regions, but throughout history, malaria has affected enormous parts of the world. For ancient communities, it was a constant threat. Generations lived under its shadow. Children grew up surrounded by it. Families feared it. Entire populations adapted to it. And in some regions, certain blood types appeared to provide advantages. Not complete immunity, not perfect protection, but small advantages, the kind that matter over hundreds or thousands of generations. When enough generations pass, even tiny advantages can shape entire populations. This is one of evolution's most important secrets. Evolution does not always reward perfection. Instead, it often rewards survival. Even a slight increase in survival can change the future. Imagine two groups of people living in the same environment. One group survives a disease at a slightly higher rate, only slightly, perhaps just enough for a few more children to reach adulthood. At first, the difference seems insignificant, but after hundreds of generations, that small advantage becomes a powerful force. The population slowly changes. The biological traits connected to survival become more common. And so the story continues, not over years, but over centuries, not over centuries, but over millennia. This process may help explain why blood types became distributed so differently around the world. If blood types were completely random, we might expect them to appear in roughly equal numbers everywhere. But that is not what we see. Different regions show very different patterns. Some populations have extremely high percentages of type O, others show larger numbers of type B. Some regions contain unusual mixtures. Each pattern hints at a unique history, a unique set of challenges, a unique evolutionary journey. It is almost like looking at an ancient map written in biological language. Every blood type distribution tells part of a story of migrations, a story of environments, a story of survival. Imagine standing beside a campfire 20,000 years ago. A small group of humans rests after a long day. The stars fill the sky above them. They know nothing about genetics, nothing about blood groups, nothing about molecules. Yet their descendants will inherit biological traits shaped by countless generations of adaptation. Those future descendants may someday become farmers, builders, sailors, scientists, artists. But hidden within them will remain traces of these ancient experiences. This is one of the most remarkable aspects of the human body. It is not merely a collection of organs. It is also a record, a living record, a history book written in biology. Most history books describe what humans did. The body tells us what humans survived, and blood types may be one chapter in that enormous story. Now let us consider type O blood. Today, type O is the most common blood type in many parts of the world. For years, scientists wondered why. If all blood types are equally useful, why would one become so widespread? Some researchers propose that type O may have offered certain advantages against particular diseases. Others suggested that migration patterns played an important role. The truth is likely complex. Nature rarely follows a simple path. Multiple factors often work together: disease, geography, population movement, random chance, all influencing one another across vast stretches of time. What makes this especially fascinating is that no blood type appears universally superior. If one type were clearly the best, evolution might eventually eliminate the others. Yet that never happened. Instead, multiple blood types survived. This suggests that each may have offered advantages under different conditions. Imagine carrying different tools while traveling. A hammer is useful in some situations. A knife is useful in others. A rope becomes valuable somewhere else. No single tool solves every problem. Similarly, different blood types may have provided advantages against different threats. This idea helps explain why evolution preserved diversity rather than choosing one winner. Nature often values flexibility. A diverse population can survive a wider range of challenges. and humanity has certainly faced many challenges. As humans spread across continents, they entered dramatically different environments. Some moved into forests, others entered deserts, some settled near rivers, others crossed frozen landscapes. Each region contained unique diseases and unique pressures. The biological needs of one population were not always identical to another. Over thousands of years, these differences left traces. Blood types may be among those traces, but the mystery becomes even deeper. Because blood types influence more than blood transfusions, they appear connected to many aspects of human biology. Researchers have explored possible links between blood types and infection risk. They have examined relationships with digestive systems. They have investigated connections involving immune responses. The picture that emerges is incredibly complex. Blood types are not isolated features. They are part of a much larger biological network. To understand why they exist, we must understand something about the immune system itself. The immune system is one of the most extraordinary creations in nature. Every day it performs countless tasks without our awareness. It identifies threats. It remembers past infections. It coordinates defenses. It protects the body against invaders. And it does all of this continuously, day and night, year after year, throughout an entire lifetime. Blood type markers interact with this system. They help define what belongs inside the body and what does not. In a sense, they are part of the body's identification system. And identification systems matter, especially when dealing with microscopic enemies. Imagine a medieval city surrounded by walls. Guards stand at the gates. They must recognize citizens while identifying outsiders. The immune system faces a similar challenge. It must constantly distinguish between self and non-self, friend and threat, safe and dangerous. Blood type markers contribute to this process, which means they may have played important roles in ancient battles against disease. The more scientists studied these relationships, the more intriguing the story became. Some bacteria appear capable of interacting differently with different blood types. Certain viruses may behave differently as well. Again, the effects are often subtle, but subtle effects can become powerful when repeated across thousands of generations. This is one reason the mystery remains so captivating. Blood types seem simple on the surface. Most people learn their blood type once and rarely think about it again. Yet behind those simple letters lies an astonishing evolutionary story. A story involving migration, adaptation, survival, and time. Lots of time, thousands upon thousands of years. Imagine an enormous river flowing slowly across a landscape. At any given moment, the movement appears small, almost unnoticeable. But over centuries, the river reshapes entire valleys. Evolution works in much the same way. Small changes accumulate, tiny advantages spread. Gradually, populations transform. Blood types may represent the result of countless such changes, not one event, not one discovery, but an accumulation of history itself. And now we arrive at another fascinating clue. One of the rarest major blood groups is AB. Compared with the others, it appeared relatively recently in human history. Type AB combines characteristics of both A and B in a sense. It represents a meeting point, a biological intersection. Its existence reminds us that blood type history is not static. Human populations have always mixed. People have traveled, cultures have met. Families have formed across regions and generations. The history of blood types is therefore also a history of human connection, of movement, of encounters, of shared ancestry. When we examine blood types closely, we begin to see something remarkable. The story is not merely about biology. It is about humanity itself, about where we came from, about how we survived, about how our ancestors navigated a dangerous and unpredictable world. Every blood type alive today has survived an extraordinary journey. Thousands of years of disease, climate change, migration, conflict, environmental pressures, and still they remain, still flowing through billions of people, still carrying clues from ancient times. As time passes slowly, another quiet question begins to emerge. If blood types are connected to ancient diseases, could they help us understand the diseases that shaped civilization itself? Could they reveal hidden chapters of human history? Could they help explain why certain populations evolved in different ways? These questions have led researchers into some of the most fascinating areas of modern science. And the answers often lead us back to moments long before recorded history. Moments when small groups of humans wandered across unfamiliar landscapes, carrying with them biological traits that would someday spread around the globe. But this raises another mystery. For most of human existence, people lived as hunter-gatherers. Then something changed. A transformation began. Humans started building permanent settlements. Agriculture appeared. Villages grew. Cities emerged. And with those changes came entirely new diseases, new pressures, and perhaps new reasons for certain blood types to become more common. To understand how that happened, we must travel into one of the most important turning points in human history. The moment when humanity began changing the world around it, and unknowingly changed itself in the process. Now let us move a little deeper into the story. Imagine waking up 10,000 years ago. For countless generations before this moment, your ancestors had lived as hunter-gatherers. They followed animals. They gathered fruits, roots, and seeds. They moved with the seasons. Their lives were closely connected to the rhythms of nature. If food became scarce, they moved. If weather changed, they adapted. Small groups traveled across large landscapes. People rarely remained in one place for very long. Then slowly, something extraordinary began to happen. In different parts of the world, humans started experimenting with a new idea. Instead of simply collecting plants from nature, they began growing them. Instead of following animals, they began raising them. At first, the changes were small. A few fields, a few domesticated animals, a few permanent shelters. But over time, those small changes transformed the entire human story. Villages appeared, then larger villages, then towns, then cities. Humanity was entering a new age. And with it came unexpected consequences. When people lived in small, scattered groups, diseases often struggled to spread. An infection might appear within a family or a small camp, but once enough people became immune or died, the disease often disappeared. There simply were not enough new people available to keep it moving. Cities changed that. For the first time, large numbers of people lived close together. Thousands shared the same water sources, the same streets, the same markets, the same air. Suddenly, diseases found new opportunities. Infections that once burned out quickly could now continue spreading. A crowded city became a perfect environment for many pathogens, and the rise of agriculture created another challenge: animals. Humans had always interacted with animals, but now they lived beside them every day. Cattle, goats, pigs, chickens, sheep. These animals provided food, labor, and companionship, but they also carried diseases. Many illnesses that affect humans today originally came from animals. When people and animals lived in close contact, opportunities for disease increased dramatically. This was one of the most important biological shifts in human history. For thousands of years, our ancestors had adapted to one set of conditions. Now they faced entirely new challenges, new diseases, new environments, new population densities, and once again, evolution quietly responded. Imagine humanity entering a vast new chapter. The rules had changed. Survival depended on adapting to a world filled with invisible threats. Some researchers believe this period may have influenced blood type distributions in important ways. Different populations experience different disease pressures. Those pressures may have favored certain blood types under certain circumstances. The exact details remain a subject of ongoing research. Nature rarely leaves clear answers, but the patterns are difficult to ignore. Again and again, blood types appear connected to the environments where people lived, and this leads us to one of the most intriguing ideas in the entire story. Perhaps blood types are not merely ancient. Perhaps they are records of ancient epidemics. Think about that for a moment. Imagine if every major disease outbreak left a tiny mark on human biology. Not a visible scar, not a written record, but a subtle shift in which traits became more common. Over thousands of years, those shifts could accumulate. The result would be a biological map of survival, a map hidden inside our bodies. Blood types may represent part of that map, a reminder that human history is not only written in books, it is also written in genes. As cities expanded across the ancient world, diseases became increasingly powerful forces. Some outbreaks changed the fate of kingdoms. Others altered trade networks. Some reshaped entire civilizations. Yet many occurred before written records existed. Their stories vanished. The people who experienced them left behind no documents, no chronicles, no detailed accounts, only traces. And some scientists wonder whether blood type distributions might preserve fragments of those forgotten chapters. The idea is fascinating because it turns the human body into a historical archive. An archive older than any library, older than any monument, older than any surviving text. Every person becomes a living connection to countless generations that came before. Now imagine standing in an ancient farming village. The morning sun rises slowly over fields of grain. Children run between simple homes. Farmers prepare for another day of work. The scene feels peaceful, yet invisible organisms move through the community. Most people never notice them. A cough here, a fever there, an infection spreading quietly. For ancient populations, these events were part of everyday life. And over time, natural selection continued its patient work. Generation after generation, century after century, always slow, always silent, always shaping the future. This gradual process helps explain one of evolution's greatest strengths. It does not need foresight, it does not plan, it does not predict. Instead, it responds. Traits that help survival tend to persist. Traits that create serious disadvantages tend to become less common. The process is not perfect, but given enough time, it becomes remarkably powerful. Blood types may be one result of that long conversation between humanity and its environment. And yet, there is another layer to the mystery, because blood types do not only vary among individuals, they vary dramatically among populations. Consider the global distribution of blood groups. In some regions, type O dominates. In others, type B becomes much more common. Certain indigenous populations show extraordinarily high percentages of specific blood types. These patterns are not random. They reflect journeys taken long ago. Imagine a small group of humans crossing a land bridge during the Ice Age. Generation after generation, they move farther into unknown territory. They settle new lands, raise families, adapt to unfamiliar climates. Over time, their descendants become isolated from other populations. Certain blood types become more common. Others become rare. Thousands of years pass. The pattern grows stronger. Today, scientists can still see traces of those ancient migrations, not because anyone wrote them down, but because the evidence remains inside human genetics. Blood types became clues, like footprints preserved in stone. The deeper researchers looked, the more they realized that blood groups could help tell the story of human movement across the planet. Not the entire story, but part of it. A valuable piece of a much larger puzzle. And perhaps that is one reason blood types continue to fascinate us. They connect the personal with the historical. Your blood type feels individual. It belongs to you. Yet it is also connected to events that happened long before your birth, long before your grandparents, long before your distant ancestors. It links you to a chain stretching back through thousands of generations, a chain so long that it becomes difficult to imagine. If every generation averaged just 25 years, then 10,000 years represents roughly 400 generations. 400 generations of births, 400 generations of families, 400 generations of survival. And through all that time, blood types endured. The more we think about this, the stranger it becomes. Most things created by humans eventually disappear. Buildings crumble, empires collapse, languages change, traditions fade. Yet blood types remain, flowing quietly through billions of people, still carrying information from a world that no longer exists. Now let us explore another fascinating possibility. What if blood types influence not only survival but also vulnerability? Nature often works through trade-offs. A trait that provides one advantage may create another disadvantage. This is surprisingly common in evolution. Imagine carrying a coat designed for cold weather. In winter, it is useful. In summer, it becomes uncomfortable. The same feature can help or hinder depending on circumstances. Some scientists believe blood types may operate in similar ways. A blood type that provides protection against one disease might increase vulnerability to another. This could help explain why multiple blood types survived. No single type dominated completely because no single type was perfect. Different environments rewarded different traits. Different diseases favored different biological responses. The result was diversity. And diversity itself became a survival strategy. A varied population is often more resilient than a uniform one. If a new disease appears, some individuals may possess advantages that others lack. The population as a whole becomes more adaptable. From nature's perspective, diversity can be extremely valuable. Perhaps blood types represent one expression of that principle, a biological safety net woven across generations. a way of ensuring that humanity never placed all its hopes on a single solution. This idea becomes even more interesting when we remember how unpredictable history has been. Humans have survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, droughts, famines, pandemics, mass migrations, environmental changes beyond counting. Through all of it, diversity helped populations endure. Blood types may be one small but important part of that broader story. As the centuries passed, civilizations rose beside great rivers. Farmers cultivated fertile valleys. Merchants traveled enormous distances. Ships crossed seas. Ideas spread from one culture to another, and diseases traveled alongside them. The world was becoming increasingly connected. Every connection created new opportunities, new trade, new knowledge, new risks. Ancient trade routes did more than move goods. They moved microbes. A disease appearing in one region could eventually reach another. This constant movement created fresh evolutionary pressures. And once again, blood types remained part of the equation, always present, always quietly participating in humanity's long relationship with disease. As time passes slowly, we begin to notice something remarkable. The story of blood types is not really about blood alone. It is about adaptation. It is about survival. It is about humanity's ability to endure changing worlds. Every generation inherited challenges. Every generation passed something forward. Not only culture, not only knowledge, but biology itself. And hidden within that biological inheritance were clues. Clues that scientists are still uncovering today. Yet one of the strangest chapters of this mystery is still ahead. Because blood types do not only connect us to ancient humans. Evidence suggests that parts of this story may reach even further back, into a time before modern humans existed at all. A time when our distant ancestors shared the world with other human relatives. A time when evolution was experimenting with many different versions of humanity. And somewhere within that ancient landscape, the earliest roots of our blood type story may have already begun to grow. As we move further into the past, the world begins to feel increasingly unfamiliar. The cities disappear. The farms disappear. The roads, the monuments, the kingdoms, and the empires all fade away. Even the earliest villages have not yet appeared. Humanity stands much closer to the beginning of its story. And yet, the mystery of blood types continues. To understand how deep this mystery truly goes, we must look beyond modern humans themselves. For a long time, people imagined evolution as a simple ladder. One species replaced another. One stage led neatly to the next. But the reality appears far more complicated. The ancient world was not occupied by a single kind of human. Instead, multiple human relatives existed at different times. Some survived for hundreds of thousands of years. Some adapted to harsh climates. Others lived in forests, grasslands, or mountainous regions. For long stretches of time, the Earth contained several kinds of humans. Modern humans were only one branch among many. Imagine standing in Eurasia 40,000 years ago. The landscape stretches endlessly before you. Forests cover distant hills. Rivers carve paths through valleys. Small groups of humans move through the wilderness. But not all of them belong to our species. Some are what scientists now call Neanderthals. Others belong to different human groups whose stories are only partially understood. These populations sometimes lived separately. Sometimes they occupied neighboring regions. And occasionally they met. For many years, researchers debated exactly what happened during those encounters. Today, genetic evidence suggests that modern humans and some of these ancient relatives shared more than territory. They shared genes. Tiny fragments of ancient DNA still survive within many people today. In a sense, the past never completely disappeared. Pieces of it continue traveling through living generations. This discovery changed how scientists think about human history. Our story is not a straight line. It is a braided river, many streams flowing together, many populations interacting across enormous stretches of time. And somewhere within that complex history lies another clue about blood types, because certain blood group systems appear astonishingly old, far older than agriculture, far older than civilization. Some may even predate Homo sapiens itself. Think about what that means. The biological differences we call blood types may have survived not merely thousands of years, but hundreds of thousands, or even millions, of years of evolution. Few human inventions can last 1,000 years. Few buildings survive 10,000 years. Yet these blood group systems have endured across unimaginably long periods of time. That fact alone suggests they matter. Nature tends not to preserve unnecessary complexity forever. When something survives for immense spans of evolutionary time, there is usually a reason. The challenge is discovering exactly what that reason might be. Imagine an ancient tree growing for thousands of years. Generation after generation, storms strike its branches, droughts challenge its roots, seasons come and go, yet the tree survives. Its continued existence tells us something important. It possesses qualities that allow endurance. Blood types may be similar. Their survival across evolutionary time hints at an important role, even if that role is not always obvious. Now let us consider another fascinating detail. Humans are not the only animals with blood group systems. Various forms of blood type-like differences exist in other species as well. Monkeys have them. Apes have them. Other mammals possess their own versions. This suggests that the origins of blood group systems reach deep into the evolutionary past, long before humans built cities, long before humans painted cave walls, long before humans even existed. Somewhere in that distant past, these biological markers emerged, and once they appeared, evolution continued refining them. Generation after generation, species after species, the story became increasingly complex. At first, this seems surprising. Why would nature create such diversity? Wouldn't simplicity be easier? Perhaps. But evolution does not necessarily prefer simplicity. It prefers survival. And sometimes diversity itself becomes a survival advantage. Imagine a forest containing only one type of tree. If a disease appears that targets that tree, the entire forest becomes vulnerable. Now imagine a forest containing many different species. A disease may damage some trees, but others survive. The forest as a whole becomes more resilient. The same principle can apply to populations. Biological diversity creates options, flexibility, adaptability. And adaptability is often the key to long-term survival. Throughout history, humanity has faced countless biological challenges. Different environments, different climates, different diseases, different food sources. No single solution could address every situation. Perhaps blood types helped create a broader range of possibilities, a wider biological toolkit. one capable of responding to changing conditions. As time passes slowly, another mystery emerges. If blood types are so ancient, why were they discovered so recently? The answer reveals something fascinating about science itself. For most of history, people could only observe what they could see. They saw blood, but they could not see cells, they could not see molecules, they could not see microscopic structures. The tools simply did not exist. Only with advances in science did hidden worlds begin revealing themselves. Suddenly, humanity could see details that had always been present. Details invisible to previous generations. Blood types belong to that hidden world. For thousands of years, they influenced human lives without anyone realizing it. A person could survive because of a blood type advantage. A population could gradually change because of disease pressures. Yet nobody understood the underlying cause. The processes remained invisible. Only recently have we begun uncovering those hidden layers. And even now, many questions remain unanswered. Scientists understand much more about blood types today than they did a century ago. Yet the full evolutionary story is still unfolding. New discoveries continue appearing. New theories emerge. Old assumptions are revised. The mystery remains alive. That uncertainty is one reason the topic feels so captivating. We often imagine science as a collection of finished answers. In reality, science is also a journey, a process of gradually approaching deeper understanding. Each discovery reveals new questions. Each answer opens another door. Blood types are a perfect example. At first, they seemed important only for transfusions. Then researchers discovered connections to disease, then links to migration, then clues reaching back into deep evolutionary history. The deeper we look, the larger the story becomes. And perhaps the most surprising realization is this: blood types are not merely medical categories. They are historical artifacts, living artifacts. Every person carries one. Every person participates in the story, whether they realize it or not. Imagine a child born today. Their blood type is determined before they take their first breath, before they speak their first word, before they learn their first lesson. That blood type connects them to ancestors they will never know, ancestors separated from them by thousands of generations. Farmers, hunters, gatherers, sailors, nomads, builders, people whose names have been lost forever. And yet some small biological thread continues linking them together. There is something deeply humbling about that idea. Modern life often feels fast. Technology changes constantly. New inventions appear every year. Entire industries transform within decades. Yet beneath all that change, ancient biological systems continue operating quietly. Blood flows, cells divide, genes pass from generation to generation. The deeper rhythms of life remain. In some ways, blood types remind us of those rhythms. They remind us that every modern human is also an ancient human, not in appearance, not in lifestyle, but in biological inheritance. We carry the results of countless generations who survived before us, and their experiences helped shape the bodies we possess today. Now let us pause for a moment and imagine one of those ancient ancestors. Perhaps they lived 20,000 years ago. Perhaps they crossed frozen landscapes searching for food. Perhaps they survived an illness that claimed many others. Perhaps their particular biological traits gave them a slight advantage, not enough to notice, not enough to feel, but enough to survive. enough to have children, enough for their lineage to continue. Generation after generation, that tiny advantage moved forward through time. Eventually, it reached the present. Eventually, it reached us. This is how evolution often works. Not through dramatic transformations, not through sudden miracles, but through small differences repeated over immense periods of time. The cumulative effect becomes extraordinary, like drops of water carving stone, slow, patient, relentless, and remarkably powerful. The mystery of blood types becomes easier to understand when viewed through that lens. They are not isolated features. They are products of deep time, products of survival, products of adaptation, products of humanity's long relationship with the natural world. Yet another fascinating chapter still awaits us, because blood types have not only influenced the distant past. Researchers continue investigating whether they affect aspects of health even today. Some studies suggest connections involving infections. Others explore relationships with certain medical conditions. The results are often complex and sometimes controversial, but they raise an intriguing possibility. The ancient evolutionary forces that shaped blood types may still influence human lives in subtle ways. The story, in other words, may not be finished. It may still be unfolding, even now, even in the modern world. And that realization leads us toward another quiet question. If blood types helped our ancestors navigate ancient dangers, what do they reveal about the relationship between evolution and modern medicine? What happens when ancient biological systems encounter a world completely different from the one that created them? To answer that question, we must move forward through time once again, from deep prehistory into the age of science, hospitals, and modern understanding, where old evolutionary mysteries continue to meet new discoveries. As time passes slowly, the story brings us back toward the modern world. The glaciers retreat, ancient kingdoms rise and fall. Trade routes spread across continents, ships cross oceans, empires appear and disappear. Human history grows increasingly complex, and through every century, blood continues flowing through billions of lives, carrying with it a legacy far older than any civilization. For most of this journey, nobody understands what blood types are. People know blood is important. They know life depends on it, but the deeper mystery remains hidden. Only in the last few generations has humanity begun uncovering the secret. And when that secret finally emerged, it transformed medicine forever. Before the discovery of blood groups, blood transfusions were dangerous and unpredictable. Doctors sometimes succeeded. Other times, patients suffered severe reactions. The results seemed mysterious, almost random. A treatment that saved one person might harm another. No one could explain why. Then, slowly, the invisible differences within blood began to reveal themselves. The discovery changed everything. For the first time, doctors could match blood safely. Lives that would previously have been lost could now be saved. Hospitals gained a powerful new tool. Modern medicine took a major step forward. Yet even as scientists solved one mystery, another appeared. Why did these differences exist in the first place? Medicine explained how blood types worked. Evolution still needed to explain why. And that question remains fascinating even today. Imagine discovering an ancient key buried beneath the ground. You learn how the key functions. You understand its shape, its material, its mechanism. But another mystery remains. What door was it originally designed to open? Blood types can feel a little like that. We understand much more about how they function, but their full evolutionary purpose remains an active area of exploration. Researchers continue searching for answers. Some clues come from disease studies, others come from genetics, others emerge from archaeology and population history. Together, these fields create a remarkable picture, a picture showing that the human body is not merely a biological machine. It is also a historical record. One of the most interesting areas of research involves infectious diseases. Scientists notice that certain illnesses appear to interact differently with different blood groups. The details can be complicated, and researchers are careful not to oversimplify the findings. But the overall pattern is intriguing. Again and again, blood types seem connected to how the body responds to various biological challenges. This does not mean a blood type determines destiny. Far from it. Human health depends on countless factors: environment, lifestyle, nutrition, genetics, medical care, and much more. Yet blood types may contribute small influences within that larger picture. Small influences that become meaningful when viewed across populations and long periods of time. This idea returns us to one of evolution's central themes. Tiny differences matter, not because they guarantee outcomes, but because they slightly alter probabilities. Evolution often works through probabilities. A small survival advantage repeated across thousands of generations can eventually shape entire populations. And so the story continues. The same principle that may have influenced ancient hunter-gatherers could still be operating today, though in very different circumstances. The modern world is unlike anything our ancestors experienced. Hospitals exist, vaccines exist, antibiotics exist. Global communication connects billions of people. Yet our bodies were shaped by much older environments, much older challenges, much older rules. In many ways, every human body is a meeting place between past and present. Ancient biology operating inside a modern world. Blood types are one example of that meeting. They originated under conditions completely different from today's society, yet they remain with us, still functioning, still influencing medicine, still carrying traces of evolutionary history. Imagine bringing an ancient tool into a modern city. The city changes around it, technology advances, buildings rise, machines appear, but the tool remains. Its original purpose may no longer be obvious. Yet it still tells a story about the world that created it. Blood types may be similar. They are ancient biological tools surviving within a very different environment. The longer scientists study them, the more connections they uncover. Some blood type patterns help researchers trace migration routes. Others assist in understanding population history. Others provide insights into medical treatment. A feature once thought to be a simple classification system has become a window into humanity's past. And perhaps that is one of the most beautiful aspects of science. Simple questions often lead to unexpected places. Why do humans have different blood types? At first, the question sounds straightforward. The answer should be simple. Yet the deeper we look, the more expansive the story becomes. Suddenly, we are discussing ancient migrations, evolution, disease, genetics, human origins, the rise of civilization, and the invisible forces that shaped our species. A single question opens an entire landscape of discovery. Now let us imagine a researcher sitting in a laboratory today. They examine genetic data from populations around the world. Numbers appear on screens, patterns emerge, connections become visible. At first glance, the work seems far removed from ancient history. Yet in reality, they are studying the echoes of events that happened thousands of years ago. Every blood type frequency, every genetic variation, every distribution pattern contains information. Information carried forward through generations. The researcher is not merely studying modern people. They are studying history itself. History written inside living bodies. This idea would have seemed almost magical to earlier generations. Ancient kings built monuments hoping to preserve their legacy. Writers filled scrolls and books with their thoughts. Artists painted images meant to survive the centuries. Yet biology preserves information in its own way, not through words, not through stone, but through inheritance, through the continuous chain of life. And that chain stretches astonishingly far into the past. As we move deeper into reflection, another quiet realization begins to emerge. Blood types remind us that humans are connected, not only to their immediate families, not only to their cultures, but to one another. The differences between blood groups often attract attention. Type A, type B, type AB, type O, yet these categories also reveal how much we share. After all, every blood type belongs to the same species. Every blood type participates in the same human story. Every blood type emerged through the same long evolutionary journey. The variations are real, but so is the common ancestry connecting us all. Imagine standing on a hill overlooking the entire span of human history. You watch generations appear and disappear, languages emerge, civilizations rise, borders shift, technologies transform. Yet beneath all those changes, a continuous thread remains. Life passing from one generation to the next, blood carrying oxygen, parents becoming ancestors, ancestors becoming history. Blood types are woven into that thread, a small detail, yet one connected to an enormous story. And perhaps that is why people find the topic so fascinating. The mystery begins with medicine, but it ultimately leads somewhere much larger. It leads to questions about who we are, where we came from, and how deeply the past continues to live within us. Even now, researchers continue uncovering new pieces of the puzzle. Genetic technologies improve every year. Ancient DNA studies reveal information once thought impossible to obtain. Scientists compare modern populations with ancient remains. New connections emerge. New theories develop. The story keeps growing. What seemed like a solved topic often becomes more mysterious the closer we examine it. That is the nature of deep questions. The first answer is rarely the final answer. Instead, understanding unfolds layer by layer. And blood types contain many layers: a medical layer, an evolutionary layer, a historical layer, a genetic layer, a human layer, each one revealing something different, each one helping us understand ourselves a little better. Now imagine once more the ancient people we met at the beginning of our journey. Small groups moving across ice age landscapes. They know nothing about blood groups, nothing about genetics, nothing about evolution. Yet they carry within them the foundations of a story that will eventually reach hospitals, laboratories, and scientific journals thousands of years later. Their lives become part of a chain extending far beyond anything they could imagine. And perhaps there is something comforting in that thought. Human history often feels fragmented. The distant past can seem disconnected from modern life. Yet blood types remind us that the connection remains. The ancient world is not entirely gone. Parts of it survive within us, quietly, continuously, patiently, waiting to be discovered. And as researchers continue exploring this mystery, they encounter an even deeper question, a question that reaches beyond blood types themselves. Why does evolution preserve certain traits for such immense spans of time? What hidden advantages allowed these ancient systems to survive while countless other biological variations disappeared? The answer may reveal something profound about the relationship between diversity, survival, and the long future of humanity. And that question will take us into one of the most fascinating chapters of the story yet. As we move a little deeper, the mystery begins to shift. At first, blood types seemed like a medical topic. Then they became an evolutionary story. Then a story about ancient migrations and forgotten diseases. But now another idea slowly comes into view, an idea that may be even more important than all the others: the value of diversity. Nature is filled with diversity. No two trees in a forest are exactly alike. No two clouds have the same shape. No two fingerprints match perfectly. Even identical twins develop subtle differences over time. The natural world rarely chooses complete uniformity. Instead, it often favors variation. At first, this seems inefficient. Wouldn't it be easier if every member of a species were exactly the same? Perhaps. But nature is not designed for convenience. It is shaped by survival, and survival often depends on flexibility. Imagine a village preparing for an unknown future. Nobody knows whether the coming years will bring drought, floods, harsh winters, or abundant harvests. If everyone prepares for only one possibility, the village becomes vulnerable. But if different people possess different skills, the community becomes more resilient. Some know how to store food. Some understand building techniques. Some excel at hunting. Some are skilled healers. Together, they can face a wider range of challenges. The same principle appears throughout biology. Variation creates options. Options create resilience. And resilience increases the chances of survival. Blood types may represent one expression of that ancient principle. Instead of one universal solution, humanity carries several: different blood groups, different immune responses, different biological strategies, not perfect, not identical, but collectively valuable. When scientists study evolution, they often encounter a surprising pattern. Traits that seem unusual sometimes survive because conditions keep changing. A feature that provides little advantage today may become useful tomorrow. A characteristic that appears unnecessary in one environment may prove valuable in another. Nature rarely knows what challenges lie ahead. Therefore, diversity itself becomes a strength. Imagine a deck of cards. If every card were identical, the deck would be predictable. But diversity creates possibilities, more combinations, more outcomes, more ways to respond to changing circumstances. Human populations work in a somewhat similar way. Biological variation provides flexibility across generations, and flexibility has helped humanity survive some of the most difficult periods in history. Consider everything our species has endured: ice ages, volcanic winters, pandemics, famines, environmental shifts, mass migrations, periods when survival itself became uncertain. Again and again, humans adapted. sometimes through culture, sometimes through technology, sometimes through biology, often through all three at once. Blood types may be one small part of that broader story, a reminder that survival rarely depends upon a single solution. Now let us imagine a world thousands of years in the future. Future generations may face challenges we cannot predict. New diseases, new environments, new circumstances. Just as ancient humans could not imagine modern cities, we cannot fully imagine the future. Yet biological diversity may continue helping humanity adapt. The same principle that shaped blood types long ago may still matter generations from now. This realization changes how we view the topic. Blood types are not simply relics of the past. They may also be part of humanity's future. Ancient adaptations continuing their journey through time, still participating in an evolutionary story that has not ended, and perhaps never truly will, because evolution is not a finished process. It continues every day. Every generation adds another chapter. Every birth contributes to the ongoing story. The human species remains in motion, changing slowly, adapting quietly, responding continuously to new conditions. Blood types remind us of that movement. They remind us that humanity is not fixed. We are part of an unfolding process stretching across immense spans of time. As time passes slowly, another fascinating observation emerges. Throughout history, humans have often searched for clear categories. We like simple labels, simple explanations, simple divisions. Blood types seem to fit that desire perfectly. A, B, ob, O neat categories, easy to remember, easy to understand. Yet beneath those simple labels lies extraordinary complexity. Genes interact with one another. Immune systems respond in countless ways. Environmental factors influence outcomes. Historical forces shape populations. The reality is far richer than the categories suggest. This happens often in science. A simple label serves as a doorway. Beyond that doorway lies a much larger world. Blood types are a perfect example. The letters appear simple. The story behind them stretches across millions of years. Imagine discovering an old coin buried beneath the ground. At first, it seems like a small object. But then questions begin appearing. Who made it? When was it used? What kingdom issued it? What journeys did it travel? Who held it in their hands? A single coin becomes a gateway into history. Blood types work in a similar way. The labels seem small. The history behind them is enormous. Every answer leads to another question. Every discovery reveals another layer. And that layered complexity is part of what makes the mystery so compelling. Now let us return briefly to the human body itself. Most of the time, blood performs its work silently. You do not feel it carrying oxygen. You do not notice it delivering nutrients. You do not hear it traveling through arteries and veins. Yet every moment of your life depends upon its activity. The same is true for many biological systems. Their importance is hidden precisely because they work so well. We notice them only when something goes wrong. Blood types are unusual because they remain invisible even when everything works perfectly. Millions of people live their entire lives without ever thinking about them. Yet those tiny molecular markers continue existing, generation after generation, century after century, quietly performing their role. There is something almost poetic about that. One of the oldest mysteries within the human body is also one of the easiest to overlook. A person can travel the world, build a family, grow old, and never once think about the ancient evolutionary story flowing through their veins. Yet the story remains there, waiting, not demanding attention, simply existing, a silent connection to the distant past. Now imagine if every person carried a tiny historical artifact from ancient times, not in their pocket, not in a museum, but within their own body. People would probably find that fascinating. Yet in many ways that is exactly what blood types are: living artifacts, biological relics from a world long vanished, evidence of challenges faced by ancestors whose names we will never know. The more we reflect on this idea, the more extraordinary it becomes. Modern life often encourages us to focus on the present moment, today's tasks, today's news, today's concerns. But blood types invite us to think on a different scale, a scale measured not in days or years, but in millennia. They remind us that every human being exists within a much larger timeline, a timeline stretching backward through countless generations and forward into countless generations yet to come. We are links within that chain, temporary participants in a much longer story. The blood flowing through us once flowed through our parents, and their parents, and countless ancestors before them. Not the same blood, of course, but the same biological inheritance, the same evolutionary legacy, the same ancient systems continuing their journey. As the centuries unfolded, humans created myths to explain mysteries. They imagined gods guiding natural forces, spirits inhabiting rivers and mountains, invisible powers shaping destiny. Today, science offers different explanations, yet science preserves something important from those older traditions: a sense of wonder. Because the more we learn about the human body, the more remarkable it appears. Blood types are a perfect example. What seemed ordinary becomes extraordinary when viewed through the lens of history. What seemed simple becomes profound when viewed through the lens of evolution. And what seemed familiar becomes mysterious when viewed through the lens of deep time. That transformation, from ordinary to extraordinary, is one of the greatest gifts of knowledge. The world itself does not necessarily change. Our understanding changes. A drop of blood remains a drop of blood. Yet once we understand its story, it becomes something more: a messenger from the past, a record of survival, a reminder of humanity's long journey. And perhaps that is the deepest lesson hidden within the mystery of blood types: not merely that humans possess different blood groups, but that even the smallest details of our bodies carry stories. Stories of adaptation, stories of endurance, stories of countless generations navigating an uncertain world. Every cell becomes part of a larger narrative. Every biological feature becomes a clue. Every person becomes a living chapter within a history still being written. And as researchers continue exploring these clues, they are beginning to uncover even more surprising connections, connections that may reveal how ancient epidemics, forgotten migrations, and hidden evolutionary pressures combine to shape the blood types we carry today. Those discoveries take us into one of the most intriguing scientific investigations of all, where genetics, archaeology, history, and biology meet to reconstruct events that happened long before anyone was around to record them. Now, as we gently come toward the end of this journey, the story slows down, not because the mystery is fully solved, but because we have traveled far enough to see its shape. We began with a simple question: Why do humans have different blood types? At first, it sounded like a small medical detail, something you might learn once and forget. But slowly, that question opened into something much larger, a story stretching back through ancient migrations, long forgotten epidemics, and the deep history of human survival. We saw how blood types were discovered only recently, when medicine finally gained the tools to see what had always been there. We followed the idea that tiny differences in blood may have helped our ancestors survive different diseases in different environments. We explored how populations moving across continents carried these biological traits with them, shaping patterns that scientists can still observe today. And we looked even deeper, into a time when early humans shared the world with other ancient human relatives, where the roots of our biology stretch far beyond written history. Through all of this, one idea kept quietly returning. The human body is not only a living system, it is also a living record. Blood types are part of that record, not loud, not obvious, but persistent, still flowing through billions of people, still connecting us to ancient worlds we will never see again. In the modern world, we often think of progress as something external. Cities grow, technology advances, knowledge expands. But some parts of us remain deeply connected to the past, carrying forward solutions shaped by environments that no longer exist. Blood types are one example of that continuity. They remind us that evolution does not erase history, it carries it forward, quietly, layer by layer, generation by generation. And perhaps that is the most meaningful reflection we can take from this story, that even within something as simple as blood there is depth, not just biological depth, but historical depth, human depth. Time itself written into living cells. As we return from this journey, the mystery does not disappear. It simply becomes part of our understanding. We may not have every answer. Science continues to explore, question, and refine what we know. But we now see enough to appreciate the scale of what we are part of. A species shaped by time, by environment, by survival, and by countless invisible forces working across thousands of generations. So when we think about blood types now, we no longer see only letters. We see a long story of adaptation, a quiet history of survival, a reminder that every human being is connected to a vast and ancient chain of life. And in that realization, there is a calm kind of wonder, not dramatic, not loud, just steady, like blood itself, flowing, continuing, living. And as we leave this story behind, it remains with us in a quiet way, not as something we need to solve, but as something we can simply understand, a small mystery that helped reveal something much larger, the long and continuing story of humanity itself.